Every time you get into any type of conflict, you experience stress, and people are like, no, I'm not stressed, I just activate. You don't want it with me, I'm not stressed, I'm just active. When I was about 14 or 15 years old, I decided to start talking less and observing more. And since then, I've been on a journey where for years, I've studied human behavior. I've studied how they interact with each other, been in the midst of a whole load of conflict, and from it, I have learned many things. And now I'm here to teach you what I've learned so that you can learn how to better regulate yourself. Remember, the goal is to react less so you can rule more, because you're royalty. A lot of people don't realize this, but until you begin to understand who you are, you won't be able to act from who you are and impact the world in the way that you're supposed to. So, I teach emotional balance because emotional balance is required for every single area of life. It is required for you to be excellent. Conflict, arguments, beef, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing. When two or more people have a disagreement and they deal with it in the most direct way possible. So, what often happens is people get into arguments and then all sorts starts coming out. It's no longer about what you started arguing about, and it then becomes attacking the person's character, attacking the person's livelihood, highlighting weaknesses in the other person that you know are there, bringing up vulnerabilities. This is another reason why a lot of people don't like telling people secrets, because during an argument, someone will bring something out as if it's some special sort of Pokemon or some special secret attack, or like a sledgehammer that they just bang and then win, okay? All very problematic for a range of reasons. I want to talk about why that happens, and if you're the person doing it, I'm going to teach you how to stop. Now, it doesn't have to be this extreme. Sometimes this can just be you're having an argument with someone and you then just get emotional and start saying too much, and then you feel drained afterwards. There is a way in which you can navigate conflict to avoid this. First thing I would like to say is when you get into an argument, the goal isn't to win. The goal is to learn as much about the other person as possible so that you can understand where they're at, what they're trying to express, and then you can use it to then make a decision about how you want to go forwards, okay? Because most of the time when people argue with me, I don't rise up to that same level. Instead, I listen to what they're saying, understand and learn more about where they're at, and then later on assess, okay, is anything that they said true? Is anything that they said untrue? What can I learn from this? But that's a completely separate topic. Let's get into this. Every time you argue, every time you get into any type of conflict, you experience stress, and people are like, no, I'm not stressed, I just activate. You don't want it with me, I'm not stressed, I'm just active. Your body undergoes stress, your brain undergoes stress. Whether or not you want to admit it or not is completely different. We know that your body goes through stress because in the brain there are certain chemical reactions that occur, and there are certain chemicals that get released in the body during conflict. Okay? Now, there's another side of this where people recognize this and they say, oh, when I get into beef, I just get angry and I see red and then it's go time. And it's like, cool. That's not something to be proud of. It just means that your root chakra is very dominant and you need to kind of sort out that energy there. But it's okay because we've all been there. You undergo stress every time you're in an argument. This doesn't have to be a physical fight. This can be verbal fights. This can be discussions that get a bit passionate. Some sort of stress. This can also be when your character gets attacked. And then what happens is, as most of you know, you have fight and you have flight. This is like basic stuff, guys. Okay? But I don't know where everyone's at, so I need to explain this. I'm going to explain it in my way, okay? Most people use avoidance as a guise for peace, okay? Most people will avoid conflict and they'll use that as a way to say, oh yes, I'm a very peaceful person, I'm unproblematic. When what's really going on is they'll get into an argument, they'll experience the brunt of this stress, and then they just choose flight, which is avoidance. So a lot of people aren't actually peaceful, they're just avoidant. They just want to avoid the conflict, which means they still have to bear the brunt of this stress. Now, I, Eternos Bryson, believe in eternal bliss, which is a state where you don't have to experience the brunt of this. You can experience some of it, but it's very selective, okay? Now, the reason why I say this is because nowadays, the amount of stress that people live in, experience, live under, however you want to call it, is much higher than it used to be. Before, back in the days, if someone was coming for you with a machete or trying to kill you, you'd experience the stress and then the body would respond. Nowadays, if you get an email from your boss, you feel the stress and then you respond, which means that the same chemicals, the same amygdala hijacking that occurs when you experience stress is occurring for more people on a regular basis, which is why a lot of people are becoming a lot more sick in an age where technology and science is very advanced to the point where people shouldn't even be dying. But that's a whole different conversation altogether. Fight and flight. We're still talking about arguments and why you say things that you don't mean. Okay? So someone who goes into flight mode generally will either just be quiet, which is fine if that's your thing. I used to do this, I know about this. Or the most common one is they'll avoid the interaction and they'll often leave. Now don't get me wrong, I do all three of these, but I don't do all three of these as a result of stress. I can choose to do all three of these before I experience the stress. And I'm very comfortable going down the other route as well, which we're going to talk about now. So for most people, when they then get into fight mode, it either becomes extremely physical, where they start fighting, or it becomes extremely verbal. Or, and this is the most common, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of disgust, and the general term that people like to use as well is people can get very, very nasty. They become very, very nasty, okay, when it comes to arguments. And now, more often than not, the reason why the argument occurs can be for things that are important. For others, it can be for things that some may deem unimportant, like politics, religion, for example. Love is another one. I could tell you some stories about all three of those different areas in my life personally, where I've seen things, witnessed things, and even been involved in things, and in conversations where I've seen all 6 or 7 of these manifestations. However, when it comes to saying things that you're not meant to say, that normally comes from this part here, and it's normally due to the verbal, the anger, the nastiness, and the disgust. Let's talk about what's going on. The first thing that happens when you get into these types of situations is there's a switch in the brain that occurs. Now, I have a video about this in general, so I'm not going to go over everything. But what you need to know is that there's a part of the brain called the amygdala that gets hijacked. And what that does is it takes your brain from a place of being logical to being in a state of survival, which has to do with the root chakra. Okay? So we're no longer dealing with logic. No. What happens is we then start dealing with survival. And that's where you become animalistic in nature. That's when you start attacking the person. Okay? And this is, for most people, an automatic response. This is why a very slight comment, someone can make a very small comment, and all of a sudden the other person wants to kill you. Okay, I've seen this. If I talk about the environment that I grew up in, all it takes is one sentence and then someone's trying to kill you, or someone's trying to stab you, or someone's trying to harm you, or someone's dashing bricks through your house. Someone's doing all sorts, just based off a sentence alone. Even a sentence with 3 words can be enough. Even 1 word can be enough. For me, there was 1 word that I used to hear, and if anyone called me that 1 word, this would activate. Now, don't really care as much in terms of when it comes to this. I've detached from it. The point is, everyone can identify with this process in some way. The only way you can become free from this process is if you actively work to disconnect it, which most people don't do. Which is why an observation that I've made, and many people may not like to hear this, is that we have a lot of adults walking around with their big jobs, with their money, with their status, with their years of experience, who mentally, I would even say that there are children who are better at expressing their emotions than the majority of adults, because they never work through this. Children will cry. Children will tell you how they're feeling. You ask the child what's wrong and they'll express it. They'll tell you, okay? Children get into conflict and a teacher will resolve the problem, and then those 2 children will become friends the next day. I've seen it. I go into fights at school, the next day me and the person are cool. It happens, all right? Adults will get into an argument once, and then for the next 10 years, they're holding that person in their heart. They have grudges, which then causes sickness. They become very nasty. They say things they don't mean, etc., etc., etc. So please understand this, because this is what we're going to completely dismantle. Now, the whole flight or flight thing, that's human nature, okay? You're always going to feel this to some extent. However, all of these manifestations can be transcended, and this is where I tell you how. Okay, this is a scale, and this is what happens when you get angry. You operate more from emotion than from intention, which means that you're speaking and you're saying things based on how you're feeling in the moment rather than what you actually mean to say, which is why people will say a thing and then be like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to say that, I'm so sorry. And what happens after that is people then say, no, you did mean to say it because you said it, which isn't entirely true. Oftentimes as well, people project. So when they're angry, they'll say things that actually apply to themselves and not about you. But it will come out in the form of self-hatred expressed as hatred towards someone else. Okay, which in itself is an issue, because when it comes to the words you speak, you have an energy field around you. All of that stuff hits your energy field before it then leaves to hit the other person. So the words you speak literally affect yourself, and there is anatomy within the spirit that amplifies this. It's known as the echo chamber, but I'm not teaching certain spiritual principles yet. I will in due time. Emotion and intention. I just needed to show you this before I then explain. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice, when you get into conflict, rewiring your brain to do the correct thing. What does that look like? Pause, regulate, and then respond. Some people watching my videos may think, oh, this is so simple, etc., etc. That level or layer of thinking is part of the problem, okay? Sometimes it's the simple things that work, but you just don't practice them enough. I'm not here to give you a complex 14-part method, okay? We have 3 steps here that are very simple. You just have to practice using them. Emotional balance for me is a lifestyle. It's not something I have to work for anymore. It's just a state that I live from. Sometimes I fall out of it, I bring myself back in. The reason why is because I found simple ways that work, not complex ways that work. When I'm in the midst of an issue, I'm not thinking about 16 steps to breathe correctly, to then imagine a disc and this and that. No. Pause, regulate, respond. This is arguably one of the most important steps, okay? Because this is where you stop yourself. If you don't pause, you can't regulate how you're feeling. If you don't pause, your brain will go back to what you've programmed it to do. Like when you fall asleep driving a car. Most people, or some people have experienced this, where you'll fall asleep at the wheel. Actually, I hope most people haven't. And then you just wake up at home, right? So it's a thing that's been studied, right? It has to do with genes and your mind. And watch the video I have about mastering your mind and breaking negative cycles, because I talk about this. But the first thing we're going to build is the ability to pause, okay? Now, once again, I can only give a rough overview in these videos, but if you can remember this, it will benefit you greatly. Okay, next time you're in an argument, when someone says something, don't snap back instantly. I want you to take at least 3 seconds, sometimes even 5 if you have to just pause. Now, I'm not even going to tell you to think about what the other person said, because for some people that may be a bit too difficult. If you can't think about what the other person said, that's perfectly fine for now. All right, I understand many people are beginners, but what I want you to at least do is I want you to identify how you're feeling based on what the person just said. So you pause and you think, how am I feeling right now? What is going on internally? Okay, now I even do this to this day, because there are still things that people say to me that make me feel angry. I stop and I think, wait, okay, why am I feeling this? Or at least, what am I feeling? Okay, in the midst of an argument, forget thinking about why you're feeling a thing. Just identify how you're feeling. And people are good at this, right? I've seen it. Oh, I'm getting angry. Don't make me angry. So it's pretty straightforward, okay? That's the good thing about emotions. You can feel them easily. Right, so you pause and you think, what am I feeling? Okay? Then you want to regulate. What that means is You then want to accept the fact that you're feeling what you're feeling, and then you simply make a choice. You can choose. It's like a skill tree opens up and you can select your path. Now, I know this is possible because I've done it. When you punch someone in the face, it's a decision you make. You're not just being carried to punch the person. The reason why I know this is because I've seen people get into fights with someone that's skinny, and someone skinny will call them a word and then they'll punch them. And then a big guy comes along and says the same thing to them, and before punching them in the face, the person stops. They get angry, but they'll stop and then they'll just walk away, or they'll be like, and then they'll walk away. Why is that? Because there is some form of regulation that goes on. There is always a choice. Always. You always have a choice. So you then have to choose how you want to respond. You can respond with words, you can respond with fists, you can respond with whatever you want to respond with, as long as you're aware that you've made the decision to do so. Now, I do not condone violence, but if that is the path that you choose, that is the path that you choose. This will also help you use reasonable force at least, because in some situations, violence may be the best answer. Just an example, okay? We're being real here. I'm not here to lie to you guys or tell you something that isn't as it is, all right? If you know where I come from, you know that people fight all the time. It's just one of those things. Sometimes it's necessary. So, as long as you pause, you can then choose and then respond. Now, this will help when it comes to saying things you don't mean, because that 3 to 5 second window that you create then allows you to at least have some sort of a filter. Once you have that filter, everything becomes easy. Of course, I teach people how to develop this filter when I work with my clients. I give you specific meditations, etc. that help you do this. But if this is something that you really want to master, then you just need to remember this, okay? Next time you're in an argument, just think, okay, 3 to 5 seconds. I just need to pause. I need to listen. 3 to 5 seconds. Just remember, 3 to 5 seconds. That's all. Very simple solution to a very straightforward question. How do I stop saying things that I don't mean? It's very simple. As soon as someone gets into an argument with you, just pause for 3 to 5 seconds and you're good. Something else that I'd like to say as well, when it comes to what am I feeling, some people find it helpful to actually say or name the emotion out loud. Now, obviously in the midst of the thing, it can be pretty bad for some people. They're like, oh, I'm angry. Don't make me angry. Da, 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 da. Whatever works, okay? I prefer to do this internally. But this is a very simple solution to a very common problem. Try it, see how it works. If you don't like it, if it doesn't work for you, reach out to me, because there are other ways to do this. But this is the most straightforward. Why am I going to give you a complex method when simplicity always wins? Anyway, that's it for today, guys. You can join our community, the Path of Wisdom, where we have business people, spiritual people, people who are involved in many different arenas, coming from all different continents of the world, all in one place, all communicating with each other. If it's something that you want to do, for now it's completely free. So just click the Discord link in the description and you can join us. You can also ask specific questions there. You can reach out to me and my brother directly. And yeah, happy to be back.